Ladies and gentlemen, retail patch 1.48 finally dropped, and I have good news for you. Bastion got a giant buff. I'm sure that everyone is extremely excited. Wait a minute. Bastion got buffed? And that's not the only thing that's changed. There's been a multitude of buffs and nerfs, so let's break down each one and tell you what that means for you and how you can proceed this competitive season. If you like GameLeap content or just want to improve, do me a favor and go check out GameLeap.com. But let's just jump right into it, shall we? Now, kicking it off with the first change that we have for you is that honest healing actually got decreased from 75 per shot to 70. Now, keep in mind that this is a relatively minor change, but I'm not quite sure why this is nerfed. While I do think that Ana is particularly powerful, I do think that it's important that she's decently good in the meta as she takes a lot of skill to execute. Now, what this means for you personally is that if you're Ana, you're going to be punished slightly more for missing your shots, because sometimes you're going to have to compensate for missing your shots with using your nades to heal your teammates. I've said multiple times in other videos that using nades aggressively is the best way to use nades, and as such, every nade that you have to use to heal your teammates is a missed opportunity. On top of this is going to hurt her old generation slightly, which is definitely going to hurt her as well. While I ultimately don't think that this changes Ana's position, you need to keep in mind that this is going to be a slight nerf to Ana overall. Now moving on to the next character on our list, we have Ashe. And Ashe has a relatively minor change. Her scope actually reaches in max zoom halfway through the scope animation instead of as it completes. This allows you to line up your shots slightly sooner, and it's a nice quality of life change for Ashe at the very least, but I don't really think that it changes her all that much. Now, of course, we have to transition to the title of this video, which is Bastion, and Bastion got huge buffs, like really, really big buffs. Let's break them down and talk about them, tell you what this specific change means for you. So his sentry mode got specifically buffed, with the spread got decreased 10%, and the shots until max spread reduction went from 60 to 40. To clarify both of these points, the spread just means that it's more concentrated, more overall DPS or bullets in a tighter spread, which means it's going to do more damage as long as you're decently accurate. And then the shot max spread reduction, this is a change that was implemented a while back to where the more you fired with Bastion, the better the spread became, and after 60 shots, it became the best possible. But now it happens after 40 shots, which means it's just an overall buff to sentry mode. Spread decreased plus the shot until max spread. This just means that sentry mode is just better, and Bastion is just gonna be better and more lethal while he's in sentry mode. But I'm gonna talk about what this means for you against Bastion in a second. The next buff actually comes from his repair aspect, and the thing is, his resource drain rate will actually increase, which means it will drain 20% faster. Now, in order to compensate for this, the healing per second was actually increased from 75 to 90. Now, overall, this might seem like a give and take, but it really is a buff, because essentially you're sacrificing your meter for more heals per second, which means that you need less time to actually heal yourself up, which means less downtime, which is of course a buff for Bastion. Now, as far as what this change means for you is that Bastion's going to be more oppressive in your games. I still don't think that this makes Bastion anywhere good at all at higher ranks, because the biggest problem right now is the tanks that support Bastion. They're not very good right now for enabling Bastion in the same way that they used to be, with the giant Orisa shields and the giant Sigma shields to basically counteract all of his weaknesses. And Bastion has a great deal of weaknesses as long as you have synergy. But the thing at lower ranks is that there is not that synergy. It can be difficult for you to counter Bastion without that sort of synergy. So I actually think that this buff actually makes Bastion better at the lower ranks, where he was already dominant and oppressive, and doesn't change him hardly at all for the higher ranks, which I don't get, and I frankly don't understand why Blizzard would do this. But keep in mind, our channel just released a how to deal with Bastion guide that is 100% gonna help you dominate Bastions, especially because they're gonna see an uptick in play. So go check it out so you don't get rolled by this new menace. Now, moving on to Doomfist changes, he has a quality of life change about his abilities, allowing him to instantly hold down his ability and sizing slam on the first target he sees, which is a nice change. But he has also received one change that's kind of a buff and one change that's a nerf. The first one is when he lands near enemies right on top of them, it actually pushes them back a certain distance if he's right on top of them, and if he's a little bit farther away, it pulls them in. This basically makes it more consistent where the enemy will end up right in front of the Doomfist. It allows your combo or follow-up to be easier to execute execute and more consistent. You're never gonna get these weird scenarios where you land right on top of someone and they like get on top of your head or something. So more consistency on Doomfist is always appreciated, especially with all the lack of consistency from all of his bugs and things like that. Now the next change is the aerial seismic slam no longer has a slight acceleration time, which basically means before when you use seismic slam in the air, it was a little bit quicker, and now it's not as quick. But their justification for this is that it brings it in line with the regular seismic slam, which means you'll arrive at destinations more reliably, quote unquote. Here's the thing about this change: even though they packaged it like it's no big deal, like it's not an actual nerf, it really is a nerf, and I'm going to explain to you why. Just because you make things consistent across the board, if you lower the power level of some things to bring it in line with consistency, you're still nerfing the character overall. Let me give you this perfect example. If for some reason every third shot on McCree did double damage randomly, that would be a really weird thing to do, right? But you can't deny that that would just increase the power level of the hero, right? If all of a sudden they got rid of that third shot double damage on McCree, just because it made it more consistent and it was logical to remove it, doesn't mean it's not a nerf, which is exactly the same scenario for this change. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal overall, but it's something to note and keep in mind. And if you're trying to run away from fire while using an aerial seismic slam, you're going to be moving a little bit slower on average, so that's something that you need to accommodate for. Now moving on to the next character on our list, we have Junkrat. And Junkrat's regular primary fire, his frag launcher, the projectiles maintain slightly more of their velocity on ricochet, which means that bouncing is going to be easier, it's going to be better. You're not going to have these little wimpy projectiles that don't go anywhere when you bounce them along walls. It's going to be slightly better for Junkrat overall, and it's going to be easier for you to get these bounce plays in tight corridors. Now for its concussion mine, the projectile speed was increased from 20 to 25, and when it actually hits a player, it doesn't bounce off nearly as hard. Now this is actually a pretty nice buff to the concussion mine. The fact that the projectile speed was increased means that it's going to be a little bit easier hitting the concussion mine frag launcher combo from slightly farther away, because the frag launcher will hit, then you can actually throw the concussion mine, it'll get there sooner, and you can detonate it pretty easily. I think that this makes this combo more reliable, which overall is a nice change for Junkrat. And then that's not the only buff that Junkrat received. His total mayhem, the bomb detonation happens faster from 1 second to 0.7 seconds, and then the bomb spread actually was increased by 50%. This means that you can't just step right outside of a total mayhem in order to dodge it, because it's going to go a little bit farther. If you're right on top of a Junkrat when you kill him, because it detonates instantly and it actually spreads, you can't really reaction just walk out of it. You really need to be thinking about how the total mayhem is going to drop before you kill the Junkrat, because it's going to be harder to just see, hey, it's falling, I can just walk right out of it. This is going to make it a little bit more lethal. You're going to have to respect it. And I think once people die to this a couple of times, you're not going to make the mistake anymore of killing a Junkrat and standing near his corpse. Now, as far as what all these changes mean for Junkrat, I don't think this is going to make Junkrat all of a sudden top tier by any means, but he's going to be overall better, and on the maps that he's good, I definitely think he's far more viable than he was before. Things like Hollywood first defense, Eichenwald first defense, Temple of Anubis first and second defense. There's a lot of different scenarios where you can definitely get value out of Junkrat now, and this only makes him that much better. Now moving on to the next character, Mei. She got a slight change. Her cryo freeze actually behaves exactly like her ice wall, which means that it blocks line of sight and collisions in the same way. So it's a really small change, but just think of it like a wall. You can actually like hide behind a Mei against a Diva Bomb or a High Noon or things like that. So pretty small change, but it's something to keep in mind. It's nice to know these little small interactions just in case that corner case scenario comes up. Now for Mercy, Mercy actually got a pretty decent buff. Her primary healing increased from 50 seconds to 55 seconds. Now this is a nice Mercy buff. It's going to increase her healing. It's going to increase her ult generation. This is nice all around. However, keep in mind it doesn't quite reach that threshold before of Winston that does 60 damage per second. So if you're trying to heal someone that's getting zapped by Winston, they're still going to die. It's not lined up like it was before at one point in time. On top of this, while this is a nice change, I don't think this is an insane change. It does make Mercy slightly more viable at healing tanks, but I also know that Mercy's best at actually damage boosting and pocketing DPS, where the extra healing doesn't really matter proportionate as much as it does healing the tanks. Now moving on to the next character on our list, we have Moira, who got some interesting changes, but overall they're nerfs. Let me explain. So for her Biotic Orb, the damage radius actually got reduced from 5 to 4 meters. This is going to be nice for, you know, those random Samito killing Moira orbs that kind of zap you really far away. They're kind of pretty far away from you, but you kind of die to them randomly. It's not going to deal with all of them, but it is going to deal with a little bit less of that annoying aspect of them, which is a little bit nice for people who don't like Moira orbs. Now the projectile speed got increased from 16 to 20, which at first might seem like a buff, but it actually might not be. The thing is, while yes, it can actually deal damage and heal from further away potentially, it can also quickly leave without getting the full value that it wants to. If you're trying to heal a tank or something and it just zooms right by them, it's not going to get the full value that you wanted out of it. This is going to put extra skill into the ability, bouncing it off walls, bouncing it off ceilings, making sure it sticks around and does exactly what you want. It's going to be really important on Moira, which means her skill ceiling is definitely increased, even though that this is a nerf. Now, lastly, the projectile duration is reduced from 10 seconds to 7 seconds. This means that it just sticks around for less time, which of course is going to be a nerf all in all. Like I said, it's going to make those damage orbs that just randomly fly around the map forever and kill someone. Those are going to be far less likely, but at the same time, it means that your orb can't be there to get later value later on into its cast time. So that's all in all going to be a nerf for Moira. This is an interesting change. It makes her slightly more skill intensive, but overall it's a nerf. So I do think that Moira isn't going to be as powerful as she was before. Now moving on to the last and final big hero change for the patch list, we gotta talk about Zenyatta. So Zenyatta's Orb of Discord, the damage amplification on targets got increased from 25% to 30%. Now this is a reverted Discord with still having Zen's compensated juiced primary fire. Now the thing is, basically compared to several former iterations of Zen is insanely powerful when you compare him directly to his old players. When looking at Zen, you can clearly see just how bad power creep has gotten in the game, because I still don't think that Zen is that good. While I will regress, I do think that the Zenyatta Orb of Discord can be very pivotal, especially in the Echo mirrors. Echo's a really big character right now, and giving a Harmony Orb to your own Echo and discording the enemy Echo, especially with that extra 5%, that's a big deal and can really swing those matchups. And the extra percent can make dives be executed much better on average. That being said, the biggest problem with Zen right now is he's paper thin in a world filled with Doomfist and Hammonds, and I know for a fact that this does not fix any of those problems. So realistically, I think the power creep is too strong in the game, and this is not going to make Zen see sizable play. But for your average rank game, having that extra amplification is definitely going to make you and your team more lethal, and it's always nice to get buffs on our favorite little Omnic. Speaking of all the characters on this list, if you want to learn how to master any of these characters, or if you're struggling trying to get value out of any of these characters, definitely go check out GameLeap.com. We got in-depth VOD reviews, advanced tips and tricks, and all the things you need to know in order to actually improve at Overwatch. So do yourself a favor, go check it out. Anyways, I hope this video has been extremely helpful for you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you just want to roast me, please let me know in the comments down below. But that's all I got for you today. I'm Coach Mills, and until next time,